The tough balancing act between protecting sovereignty and promoting diplomacy took to a head when presidential candidates were asked in the final debate what they do over the disputed territory within the West Philippine Sea. Unfortunately, none of the candidates had sufficiently addressed the issue, says Professor Mayo Lopez of the Asian Institute of Management. He is also the committee chair in national security at the Management Association of the Philippines. He joins us now from our Rockwell studio in Makati. So good to have you with us, Professor. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
So to what would you attribute this failure to communicate a strategy in the time that they were given defending the country's national security?
I don't think our candidates were really that conscious of the West Philippine Sea issue until maybe 2-3 years ago. And even then, they did not really study the issues all that well. No? In fact, part of the problem, I think, of the reason why they could not address it is because they're not also sure exactly what are the national interests involved here as far as outside of sovereignty. No? Sabi ko nga, I said the incursion of the Chinese was a much-needed sampal sa mukha to us Filipinos, because we have been so insulated and so isolated, we really did not look at the West Philippine Sea or the South China Sea until the Chinese incurred. No? We've had kalayaan there for the longest time, but outside of a curiosity, how many Filipinos really know just how far kalayaan is from the rest of the archipelago? No?
But it's certainly become a pressing issue right now. It is considered one of the issues and a presidential platform, if you will. The issue on hand coming at a time China's growing assertiveness is really putting everyone in a tricky situation, Professor. On the one hand, they're supposed to defend national sovereignty, and on the other, harness trade ties with an economic powerhouse, which is China. So what would you have wanted to hear?
Well, for one thing, it's difficult for us to defend a territory when we have nothing to defend it with. We have hardly a navy, we have hardly an air force, and therefore you cannot project your power to protect your seas. No? It's only now that we're starting to build it up, and it's a good way to end, a gracious way for the Aquino administration to end it, now that they brought in a few more warships and certainly the incoming of more warplanes. But really, from about 2-3 years ago, we started a series of discussions on how do we tackle this particular issue. And I think you noticed that all the 5 candidates did say we have to go the legal route, which is to go by the UN, and then at the same time pursue other means. The most dramatic, of course, was Mayor Duterte. He's willing to die planting the Philippine flag on what he says is Philippine territory. No? Now, on the other hand, many Chinese experts have said that we could follow a 2-track system, follow the legal, and at the same time burying the fact that we cannot really exert our military power, for which we have very little. We could do other strategies. For example, educational cultural. The Chinese themselves have hinted that they would not mind educational cultural exchange. Then there is, of course, scientific. We could do joint exploration. And, of course, commercial financial, no? I mean, or economic financial. The West Philippine Sea, South China Sea, may have gas deposits, oil deposits, mineral deposits that will become very valuable as the economies go on. No? And I think this is where we can start to soften the
But is it
conflict.
really a graceful exit, you think, for the Aquino administration as it is? It's now in court. I mean, the administration has brought the Philippine complaints over China's territorial claims to the UN tribunal. Beijing has since stopped talking to the government as a result. So doesn't that leave us little leeway to actually do the other means of trying to repair these fraught relationship?
Oh yes, but at this stage, even China has expressed that the fact that the Aquino administration had kind of spoken hard against it makes them a little leery dealing with Aquino. On the other hand, they're very open to the new administration, who may be softer on their approach to China. No? It has been said that the Chinese do not want to be shamed in good neighbor policy, supposedly. But I think the Aquino administration at least went on record as having been the one that finally registered the complaint with the United Nations and is working hard to achieve some kind of resolution to that. Now, if we win that, that's a good thing. That's something to start with. But as they say, the difficulty is that the Chinese are already there on most of the islands, and it will be very difficult to
Exactly.
kick them out.
I mean, Beijing has pressed ahead with constructing artificial bases in the disputed areas. So what sort of measures can we do beyond just educational and cultural relationship here with the building of structures going on?
Joint scientific research which could use the structures. That's one possibility. You have to think outside the box here. And one possibility is to declare all of those as, in effect, research sites. However, we have to study just how bad an impact those constructions had on the natural ecology of the place, because we'll have to talk about ecological security. If you destroy the spawning ground of the fish, the South China Sea, the West Philippine Sea, which is fishing territory, much of the reasons why China wanted it is because they have to feed their people. And we also have to feed our people. Now, if they destroy the ecology of that, you may have a much less to fish in that area.
Well, national security...
So we will have to do research on how do you restore that.
Looks like there's a lot of homework that has to be done by the next leadership here, and it goes beyond national security. Of course, that includes food and human security, which you also cover.
Human security, economic security.
We've seen how hungry farmers have taken to the streets because of El Nino, the lack of rice and crop subsidies because of the destruction of our agriculture. Did we get any clarity from the presidential candidates on food and human security, Professor?
Not as much, and I don't really blame them, because the format of the debates is that they were given very little time. Even the 5 minutes, which is excellent, that ABS-CBN gave them to close their presentations, was not enough to cover the myriad problems, the myriad crises that they had to address. No? And if you have 10 major issues, you divide 60 how many? The 5 minutes, how much will you get? How much time can you get to really delve down and drill down on the issues? Very little.
The new leadership may very well present a possible opportunity for Beijing and Manila to mend ties. But are you as optimistic that that could be the case after a new leader is sworn in, whoever that leader may be?
Well, a lot depends on how people will alter their stand, adapt their stand once they're there in the hot seat. No? It's easy for people to say we will fight them, but the question is, what will be the basis of the fight? I don't think Mayor Duterte will be advised to do what he wants to do. On the other hand, let's say it's Grace Poe, whether a more feminine, more nurturing touch would do the trick. No? And but I think we have to do this on multiple arenas. No? And I think the exercise of soft power by both countries on each other will be useful, no? Instead of the military hard power posturing that is now happening.
So, Professor, first 100 days, what would you see the new leader to do in terms of national sovereignty?
I think they will have to first sit down and define something that has not been defined clearly by most administrations. What is the Philippine national interest? What are our goals? What are we prepared to defend? How do we define ourselves? I think former Senator Letty Shahani has been asking for that definition for, I don't know, decades now. But it has never really been asserted. And maybe that's part of our problem as a people. We don't really know, outside of territorial sovereignty, what else we are defending when we try to talk national security.
Okay, well, thank you so much for the context there. Really appreciate the time, Professor Maya Lopez of the Asian Institute of Management, joining us on national sovereignty issues ahead of the presidential elections.
My pleasure.